May all that I say and all the chizuk that we gain bring nachad ruach to Hashem Yitbarach, invoke rachamei shamayim for all those in need of yeshuot and nechamot, and serve as a zchut for Klal Yisrael. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, welcome everyone. Emuna Reflections on Creation, Part 3. Today we're going to talk about the wisdom of the nations. We're going to talk about the origins of Chinese medicine, get a little understanding of it, and we're going to top the whole evening off with the idea. Learn a little bit about the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. Just get a whole, grasp of what it is, how we're supposed to interact with the non-Jews, and what's our responsibility. I think it gives some clarity, and I think there are a lot of questions that are asked. What does it mean to be chosen? And at the end, we're going to top it off and discuss some amazing insights into healing that come from physical manifestations of illnesses. So we're going to go through some of the things. Maybe every week for the next few weeks, we'll sort of end the shiur that way. We'll go through different sort of ailments and see what the emotional, spiritual work is that we need to do to try to help cure that particular physical ailment. So what does it mean that we're the chosen nation? So what it doesn't mean is that we should be with our nose up high and look down at anybody else. That's what it certainly doesn't mean. What it means is an am nivchar means exactly that. We were chosen. And as we mentioned, I think in the last shiur, what it really means is that we were chosen by Hashem. And that gives us our unique status. That and that alone. Hashem could have chose someone else, but He chose us, and that means that we have, with that chosenness, with that status of uniqueness, it bears with it a very high ticket price of being responsible, of being what we call a light onto nations. It comes with a huge price tag on it to really bear the responsibility of acting morally, acting properly, so that we set an example and a tone, an ethic tone for the universal moral code of everyone. Everyone's looking at us. So we have to understand, yes, it's wonderful, but again, with that, we have to, we're bearing a uniform on us, and that's very important for us to always bear in mind. So the idea of the 7 nohide mitzvot is to bring unity in the world. What does it mean? It means to bring unity of the Jewish nation and unity in the fact of the belief in one God. Unity of mankind means that everyone lives in peace and harmony. So in other words, we are supposed to live with the Gentile nations in peace and harmony. Okay? On the other hand, it also, of course, means monotheism. How do we do that? By all of us understanding that we're all serving one God. So it's a sense of oneness on a personal level and on a national level for us to the way we look at Hashem's command over the world. How does the Gentile fulfill its purpose in this world? By keeping these commandments. In other words, when a non-Jew observes their 7 basic laws, what they're basically doing is they're fulfilling their purpose. They're accepting upon themselves ol malchut shamayim. Not any differently than a Jew. Their task in life is to accept the oneness of Hashem just like we do, and to respect and uphold, serve Hashem in that level the same exact way. There's no difference. And by them doing so, they help to perfect the world, because we become partners together, us and the Gentile nations, we become partners with them. And by us partnering with them, what we end up doing is we bring to Hashem nachat ruach. So Hashem derives nachat ruach from the righteous Gentiles of the world, just in the same way as He does from Am Yisrael. So, we need to be very clear on that. The purpose of the non-Jew is the same thing as the Jew, to achieve closeness of Hashem, to get to know Hashem. He serves Him from a different place, but the end goal, his pathway to getting there is different, but the end goal is to achieve the same thing, is to be close to Hashem. fact is, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, there's a story that he brought back to, he was not brought back to Jew, excuse me, he actually taught the Roman governor, Antonius, he taught him Kabbalah. And he derived great pleasure from this. Not only is it our tafkid to teach Torah on the level that pertain to the 7 Nohide laws to the non-Jews, it's our obligation to teach them, to seek out, to teach them the Torah that pertains to them, and to create an environment that they are going to want to serve Hashem on that level. On that level, and want to learn. They should want to learn Torah of those specific laws that pertain to their specific tafkid. So it's very interesting, because I always had questions about the Chabad. I always hear these stories about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was especially nice to this Gentile and that Gentile. I've heard all kinds of different stories. In fact, I recently heard a story of a policeman, right?
Yeah.
You heard this one?
Who named his son?
He named his son Mendel,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Because he got a bracha, thank you for reminding me, he got a bracha from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was one of those who would be like the shomer of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he saw the humdrum always around the Rebbe, and can I get a bracha too? Do you think the Rebbe is going to be willing to bless me and my wife? They were not Jewish. Does the Rebbe also bless non-Jews? And they said, sure, I'm going to come and take you to him. And he got a bracha from the Rebbe. And 9 years they weren't able to have kids. And the following year they gave birth to a boy. And the husband said, I want to name my son Mendel. And the wife looks at him and says, what are you, nuts? I mean, a guy, walking around school and going to be called Mendel? And he says, I want everyone to know that it was because of a righteous tzaddik Jew that he was born. That's going to be his sign. I want him to fight off everyone when anyone ever has something to say about the Jewish people. Wow. I was so in awe when I heard that story. There's plenty of stories like that. No, they didn't come with the Jewish, no. But the idea is and I never understood that whole idea of the Chabad. Really, they go after, and there's, Carly Bach stories like about, how nice they were to non-Jews. Like I didn't always understand the scoop of it, but now with doing the studying and the learning and the teaching, I'm starting to understand that really, this is incumbent upon us as Jewish people to try to enforce the ethical moral code of the Torah upon everyone, to set an example and to have them make sure that they fulfill what they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing. In fact, as it says in Tana Devei Eliyahu, it states specifically that a Gentile is like a Jew and can receive actually Ruach HaKodesh when he learns Torah. If he attains that level of keeping the 7 laws in the same way that we're medaktek, that we are 100%, trying to abide by all the laws that we're given, all the mitzvot that we're given by Hashem, he can actually attain Ruach Kodesh. In fact, as I heard some amazing stories, there was just recently another story I heard of this Ishmaelite who was able to know, No, he was able to tell when he saw a person that bared an illness if they were going to live or die. He could tell by the aura on their face. And one day, it was way back in the time of the Tanaim, this Tanakh said to him, I need to know, how do you, and he says, well, I won't tell you unless you teach me some of your Torah. And at the end, he decided, okay, I'm going to teach you some of the Torah, and he ended up taking him, and it ended up being that this Yishmaelite would fast for 3 days, he would tovel in the mikvah, he would wear only white clothing, he would go into a meditative state for 1 full day, and then he would enter somewhere in the forest, this cave-like place, and he would have to actually, and the fact is they say that the Tana was scared because in order to go into the cave, he had to actually bend down, and he was scared that maybe there was Avodah Zarah inside and that he was bending down to this Avodah Zarah. But he felt like, that he asked Hashem and whatever, and I guess he did it. And when they got inside the cave, he saw that this Ishmaelite was bowing before the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in gold, in a plaque of gold. And he could tell, he would mention the name of the person, and he could tell whether the plaque lit up. If the plaque lit up, the person was going to live. And the plaque, didn't light up, the person was going to die. That was his whole secret. So you hear these stories and you wonder, how did they get to that darga? How did they get to that level? And now you see that if they do what they're supposed to do, if they keep their laws, they can reach to a very high level. And we're going to see the different things that told. In fact, it says in the Talmud Baba Kama, Rabbi Meir says, he's quoted by saying, a Gentile who studies Torah is like the high priest. But again, it's just Torah that pertains to his 7 specific Noahide laws. We're not talking about if he wants to do anything more. We don't force to convert, but we encourage them if they want so badly. We have to push them away 3 times, but whatever. If they really want to convert, I mean, they're certainly allowed to do so. But the bottom line is, they, can attain a very high closeness, a very, close dvekus to Hashem, be it on a different level, because they're missing that extra level. They don't have the divine soul, but they can refine their animalistic soul in such a way that they can achieve closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and give him nachat ruach.
Like it surpasses, is what you're saying.
If they do what they're supposed to. I don't know if they could surpass us, because we're given that gift of the divine soul. So we have that gift.
Can I give a thought?
Yeah, sure.
Just interesting, because I'm thinking of people who I know that, seem like good Christian people, and if you approach them and said, do you want to learn the 7 Noahide laws, and you're saying that they can reach a close place, how do we know that their neshama isn't supposed to actually become Jewish? Like, I'm thinking...
They'll pull for it.
I'm saying, so you're looking at someone and you judge, well, okay, so they're not Jewish, so they can only reach this place, but who knows if you open them up to something.
Absolutely.
Like, you never
Absolutely.
know. Like, some people come to Yiddishkeit even late in life.
Absolutely, 100%.
Places that
Like
people
they're meant to be. They're meant to come to it. Like it's
On their own?
Are they meant to come to it?
I don't
You're saying
understand
their
what you're saying.
neshama will
Let's say
come
they're
back.
going, but
they're
they're born to come back, like to replace that soul with a Jewish soul. Isn't that like?
Well, that's something that's given to them by a gilgul, of course.
Yeah,
It's
Not
absolutely.
everyone probably does come back.
No, of course
But
not.
those
It's just
that are
like...
meant for it should at least keep the 7 on.
Right.
Yeah, that's the minimal code for them to achieve their olam haba, their world to come, and there's certainly a place for them in the world to come. We're going to talk about that. So the 7 laws. Now let's explain the difference between their soul and our soul. So the soul of a goy has the 7 levels that are consistent with the 7 sfirot, but they're the 7 lowest sfirot. They're what's called the emotional attributes of the soul. Okay, from chesed down to malchut. The divine soul, the Jewish soul, has, in addition to those 7 sfirot, we have chokhmah, bina, and dat. We have the intellectual faculty in our mind. That is divine wisdom. That's something that we're gifted with. So in other words, the Jew has wisdom. That's where the word from Kabbalah comes from. We were mekabel, divine wisdom, whereas the goyim, whatever wisdom they acquire is through human reasoning and logic. Do you understand? We're gifted from it from the get-go. We have to just cultivate it. They don't have that ability to achieve that divine wisdom. And so we're going to see again, there's a lot of just pinpointing how that comes into the whole form of Jewish, wisdom versus, wisdom of the nations. But the idea is that they need these 7 mitzvot in order for them to again act in a moral, ethical condition. What happens is when they keep these 7 laws, which conform to the 7 sfirot, what they're doing is they're inducing inside themselves a feeling of the greatness of Hashem. It's not from an intellectual level. It's a feeling of closeness and of the greatness of Hashem. So it comes from their emotions, where with the Jew, they're required on a higher level to actually know it from an intellectual standpoint. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there's that huge difference between the Jews and the non-Jews and where they're coming from. Again, both are supposed to serve Hashem, but just from different planes.
Didn't you mention that last time about how they believe, but they believe just because they believe?
Yes,
There's no doubt.
it's a blind belief. It's funny, there's a joke that says that there were two people who were actually on an airplane. I hope I'm not going to mess this up, I'm not good at jokes. Two people on an airplane, and the Jew and a Gentile, and they're having a discussion, and the Jew says, the Gentile says to the Jew, I really respect you Jews, you have a lot of emunah, you work on your emunah, but your emunah is not logical. It's, it doesn't work always based on reasoning. And the Jew says to the Gentile, if this doesn't work out, we're erasing this from the tape, right? and then the Jew goes to the Gentile and says, but your religion is also not logical. He says, we also have a thing called blind faith. He says, because how could it be that Mary was a virgin? If she was impregnated by God, then she couldn't have been a virgin. So he says, you see, we also have the same thing. We have blind faith, just like you. It's not logical. Like he was trying to excuse himself by saying that as if the Gentile Jews, they only go the Gentile people, the nation goes only based on blind faith. But that's not the way the Jewish mindset is. The Jewish mindset is, it starts off almost feeling blind because we don't understand it, but it's that we have that sixth sense, which because we were taught it. We were taught the Torah. We were there. We witnessed the truth. The Gentile nation didn't. So they really only have their emotions to go by. We don't. We have our intellect. We were there. We witnessed it. It's a very different plane we're talking about. It's a whole different angle that we're talking about. Okay. So it's very interesting to note that Shlomo HaMelech, when he built the Beis HaMikdash, he actually pleaded to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, please listen to the tefillot of all of the nation. Why? Because as the Navi Yeshayahu writes, it's a house of prayer for all nations. The Goyim brought korbanot just as the Jews did. They were allowed to come close to the Beis HaMikdash. They weren't allowed inside the inner courtyard, but they were allowed on the outer courtyard. And the Chazal teach us that if the Gentile nations only knew how much they benefited from the Beis HaMikdash, they would cry to Hashem to have the Beis HaMikdash built just as we do. Because they didn't recognize, they didn't understand the power of holiness that emanated from this wonderful edifice called the Beis HaMikdash. They didn't understand it, but the Beis HaMikdash was there to bring unity and peace and godliness to everyone. I mean, we have to, again, this is something I think it's important for us to know, and if we ever come into contact with, someone who's not Jewish, just to explain to them, there's this sense of, oh, you Jews, you think you're, something special, the chosen people. Again, it's to make them understand that that's not what it is. We're just serving God from two different places. It's like in the orchestra, one has to play the flute on a note, and one has to play the drums, and one the saxophone. Everyone has their tune and their time. This is almost the same thing. We all have a piece of the puzzle in order to bring glory to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and bring glory to His name. And look how beautiful Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, he's a Chabad Kabbalist Rebbe here in Eretz Yisrael, brings something down very, very beautiful. And he writes, the original text of the Ten Commandments contains 620 letters in that text. 620 is the 613 Jewish Tariag mitzvot and the 7 Nohide mitzvot. Together, it's 620. 620, the gematria of crown, keter. Together with the Jewish righteous, Gentiles of the world, we can partner up with them and we can adorn Hashem's crown with 620 magnificent jewels to bring glory to His name.
It's all really beautiful and everything, but when you look at the world, it's like, that's not what's happening.
Yeah, in a way,
So
there
like,
is a
is
Rav in Yerushalayim who's working
Yes,
close.
a lot. You'll be surprised. The whole Breslev movement, a lot of them. I told you, the Garden of Emuna, they have a special edition for the Gentiles now. You would not believe there are There are congregations
I'm telling you.
upon congregations of people, of Gentiles, who are taking upon themselves to live by the no-hide commandment.
I left Montreal. This Rav came. He's a Chabad Rav. I was learning with him a lot online, and he came to Montreal and he actually met with the Inuits, the Indians,
Wow.
the Native Americans.
That's
In
amazing.
Montreal, we met with them.
No, but
and
you're
there was
saying
a
like there's all
whole-
this anti-Semitism, and that's what you're saying.
Well, look,
It's a combination.
unfortunately, that's what's brought out to us, to our faces, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. You know what, this country, the secular movement of this country are petrified, because according to the statistics, within 10 years, this country is going to be more religious than not.
Just because of the ratio of children.
Because the amount of chazara b'tshuva.
Oh, not because we have 4 times as many
No,
children.
it's the amount of people that are coming back to tshuva. I mean, who would ever believe in a lot? There are millions after millions, a lot. These secular,
Tel Aviv.
yeah. In the places that you wouldn't believe, but the media won't show you that.
Right.
They won't show you
All the
that.
bad things.
Do you know one of the things I have to tell you? One of the things that happened this past Yom Zikaron? I have to tell you this, just to show you what they want to be shown on the news. Last year, unfortunately, on Yom Zikaron, there was a group of religious Jews that were barbecuing. And so, of course, the media here, the news channel, came and they filmed it. They put it on. You see the religious Jews. There's no respect for the fallen soldiers. What did they do this year? They went back to the same park. We're going to catch them in action again. Guess what? Guess who they found this year? Who'd they find? No, who'd they find in the park? Secular people doing ala esh. Secular people doing a barbecue. And so the guy started filming. He calls up his manager at the news. Now, how do we know all this? I'll tell you in a minute. He calls him up and he says, "This is what I was able to get." The guy from his boss, he says, "Don't bring that to me. That's not going to sell." He closes up and packs up and goes away. But what doesn't he know? There's a firm guy on the side there who I guess with an iPhone, he filmed everything. He saw everything. He filmed everything. He filmed the whole conversation. It was in one of the newspapers, I think. Wow. This is what we're up against. Do you understand? They don't sell news. So what? The seculars are, out there barbecuing on Memorial Day. So what?
There was also an article, I think it's in Mishpacha, one of the rabbis. They got a secular person who was a journalist to go and interview. Did you hear about this? To go and interview how people see in the media and how. Anyways, it ended up being that they don't hate us. That they don't like.
I think I heard it somewhere. Yeah.
They did a survey.
Right.
Of people, and in the end, nobody's anti. Most people are either indifferent or respect very much.
Is that unbelievable?
And the rabbi was like, well, we have to start changing.
I heard that on Kol Bar Ramat. They had that. Yes, they interviewed a guy who said that he saw that.
Teach that,
yeah.
that they hate us.
Right. Part of the problem is that we created this separation. We definitely did. We looked at them as muktzah, and we're seeing that back now. Unfortunately, we all have to do a tikkun with this to bring unity. We all do.
Because it's just so beautiful and interesting about this country is it's just too small.
I know.
To not have the interaction, to not have the seeing and the.
You're right.
Everyone has some distant. An Israeli has a distant cousin or uncle or neighbor or friend from high school that's Chazar B'Tshuva.
Right. And every house.
What do they want to do now in Beit Shemesh?
But it's not like that in America.
I know, that's not going to happen. They want to segregate. Yeah, they want to actually segregate it, create 2 towns in Beit Shemesh, secular and none. That's not going to, I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm saying in America you could be a Jew and never know an Orthodox person, and for sure never know a person who's called Shuvah. It's the Kedusha of this land, and the way that it's made up.
Everything surfaces. Everything's more in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, now another reason why sometimes Jews are repelled, I just thought this was a very interesting part that I learned, is that with us being the light unto nations, what does that actually mean? It means that the Jew is made up of a collective part of all the Jewish souls. It's called the Shechina. What is the Shechina? The Shechina is the feminine aspect of Hashem that's down here in this world, and it's made up by a collection of all the Jewish souls together. So what does that mean? When I enter a room, I'm emanating on a spiritual level, in a spiritual realm, a presence of God. I'm bearing witness that there's Hashem, and there's a Hashem in the world. There's the oneness of Hashem. But what happens? Unfortunately, we get repelled many times because a lot of the secularists, the atheists, the people who don't want that yoke of heaven on them, when we come in and we remind them of the presence of God, that's another reason why there's anti-Semitism. But the thing is, that happens only when there's when there's not a collective unity between all these souls. When it's a spark here and a spark there, it's not as strong, and it doesn't manifest itself in such a strong way that almost frightens them from going up against us. But when we are scattered here and a little bit scattered there, then it's just like, oh, they see one light here, one light there, there's no unity, then they feel that they can go up against us. So the idea is for us to understand is the more collective we are, then the stronger, of course, of a presence that we present to the world, and the less, of course, anti-Semitism we're also going to meet, God willing, very, very soon. Okay, so let's just look at a couple of different Torah sources that sum up the idea of the Gentiles and what is written. Specific sources. The Rambam writes in Mishnah Torah, Hilchot Tshuva. He writes, the righteous Gentiles have a place in the world to come. Okay, that's proof number one. Number two, the Talmud Yerushalmi writes that with justice and an abundance of kindness, he does not deal harshly. And what is the interpretation of it? God doesn't withhold reward from Gentiles who do his and perform his mitzvot. And the third bit of proof that is in the Torah, and there are many different sources, I just happen to choose these three, is Rabbi Yirmiyahu writes, he would say, and it's in various different places, some are from the Tehillim, some are from different other Sfarim. It's written that whenever it's written the word righteous in Psalms or wherever it's written the word righteous, it actually refers to the Gentile who, when he follows the commandments, is as righteous again as the Jewish high priest. So in other words, it's proof upon proof that when the Gentile nation, when they do what they're supposed to do, they have a chelek in olam haba. They also are, again, bring nachat ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They achieve goodness in this world because they have the sense of closeness also, of course, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But again, that only comes if they allow themselves to surrender themselves to learning the 7 laws through Torah. Not through learning it through any other source, but to allow themselves to be taught what they're supposed to be doing by the Jewish people. And that's in itself a problem, because you're not going to find many Gentiles that are going to consult rabbis and are going to say to them, teach me the 7 Noahide laws. They all want to feel that God as if has, their special, they get their special treatment from God and they have their own book of, command. But it should be taught, that's what it's saying, is that it should be taught through a Torah source. They have to learn Torah and that which pertains to those specific seven commandments, and that's how they get spiritually nourished. That's where they get their nourishment from. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the wisdom of the nations. And let's talk about just what does it mean? What does it mean, Chochmat Hagoyim? What does that mean, and how does that differ from wisdom that we have? So, very, very interesting. So the wisdom of the nations, they were definitely gifted with certain wisdom. They were gifted with wisdom for science. They were gifted for wisdom in art. We're not supposed to knock down their music, their art, their science. What we're supposed to do is to convert that which we take in and that we see and that we view and we learn from them, and inject it with Judaism. What does that mean? Ooh. Okay, that's not good when the Emuna has her, sorry. So how do we do that? All that they do is a body. They do everything from their physical aspect. In other words, whatever they do, it has to do with taivas of body. So it's not injected with any spirituality. It's a manifestation of the outer realm. Our job is to look at something and try to inject it with something that's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if we see, again, we learn some science, it's to see Hashem through the magnificent creation of the world. If we see art, it's to try to use their systems of painting and art to bring out the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, it's to use their systems. It's to use the different techniques that they bring upon us. Even the music, to take their music, but to try to use it for spirit, to lift me up, not to bring me down, not to allow me to sink into the whole idea of my body being elevated, but to have my soul be elevated through it.
So then you think it's okay that some of the horrible music they're listening to is like this horrible trance music, but it has words of love and love.
Right.
And
So
it doesn't go together.
So I actually recently heard a shiur by Rav Mordechai Becher Shlita, and he said that he consulted his Rav Moshe Shapira, and he heard from him that there's nothing unholy about music. It's the lyrics, it's the words that carry with the tumah. Classical music, he actually said, is more closer to the music that was played by the Levim than today's Jewish music.
Wow.
That's what he was quoted as saying.
Let's say there was a secular song, written words and music.
Right.
Usually the music goes with...
Well, first of all, there's no inyan.
Lyrics.
Okay, so there's no inyan if you don't know that Goyish song. That's first of all. There's no inyan if you don't, like for instance, I know I'm listening to a cappella now. A lot of these a cappella songs apparently are sourced in Goyish music, and I'm not going to say, but someone recently came to my house and said to me, "Oh, that's like a Goyish," and I'm like, I don't know the Goyish. I have no clue. I don't know if it's Snoop Dogg. I don't know who's singing. I have no clue. I don't know, Beyonce. I don't know who is singing that. So it doesn't matter to me. For me, it's have a good Shabbos. That's for me. The song. I don't know anything else. So first of all, if you don't know the original song, then there's really no inyan, because you're not making any associations in your mind. If it elevates you and it brings you to Hashem, apparently, according to him, there's nothing wrong with it.
Something about the music because it's composed by someone who's...
Okay, so right, they even say that even clothes, right? So they say that even clothes that are designed by people who don't have spiritual thoughts, even that affects the neshama. They do say that that's true, but apparently, I guess this particular Rav Shapira, he said.
So I feel like in at least the Haredi world, the norm is to so much separate yourself from that. To say, I won't listen to music, I won't watch a movie, I won't. So we're not finding the good in it.
So we do. We need to. If they're able to take a song and inject such beautiful words to it, and we're able to elevate ourselves through that, then
there's some beautiful Christian songs, and if they just leave a few words out,
Right.
it totally works for
Right.
us to listen to. But if that one or two words is in there, then it's totally
right.
off.
Well, here we have another problem because they're praising someone else. So in
But
the
I listen to
lyrics
it with
already,
my-
you've got something a
But if
problem.
I listen to it with my mind that it's God, it says like God, whatever.
Look, I'll be honest with you. There are a lot of sites on the internet that have a lot of wisdom to it. Psalms, interpretations of Tehillim Prakim, but they all come from the church. I've found myself on some of them. Sometimes I'll look up something on Google and I'll find myself. I don't go in there because it could inject me in something, because that's already from the source of, that's from already the source of Tumah.
But if you're coming at it with your own kavanah and how you hear the words.
I don't know. I think that's a scary line. That's a scary line. I don't know.
Even songs that were replaced, the lyrics and everything.
Right. So there's obviously a machloket in this. Obviously there's a machloket in
Sounds
it.
like it's straight from Gehinnom.
Right.
But then it's saying Tehillim. And my kids said, Mommy, it's Torah. I'm like, I don't care what you call it. It doesn't feel
No, if it doesn't feel right, then
The rhythm, the synthesizer, it just sounds so not beseder.
Well, you have that sensitivity, that spirit sensitivity, but I don't know if everyone has that. Not everyone has that. I don't know. I know I'm able to listen to very good, beat music that I'm almost sure is somehow sourced in a goyish and not nice song, and I listen to the words, and it elevates me very much.
Right.
Very much.
The words are definitely kosher, but the music is treif.
Right. I don't know.
Would you put like kosher chicken with chazir on the same plate? But kids think I'm crazy.
I think we have to leave this as something that everyone has to go to their Rav and they have to ask them. I think that there isn't any right or wrong. I really don't believe it is.
All music is ruchani. All music.
All music. That was the derech that the Levi'im. Right. This whole shiur spoke about.
It's just noise.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Rav Amnon Yitzchak, when he came out with all the opposition against music, he said something very true, which I can't dispute, and I have a problem with it because what he said is very true. And he said, if you took the words out of certain tunes that have holy lyrics to it, if you just played the music, that beat or that whatever, you would not assume that you can compose Jewish, elevated words of prayer to that tune. And if you can't do that, if you can't envision and separate the two, then it's just not sourced properly and in the right way, and you should be listening to it. So there is definitely something very true about it. Again, I think I'm also myself in dispute about it. But thank God, I don't know, in my case, I feel like it's been able to really help me. And I preach it to all the women who come to me and talk to me about them needing uplifting of spirituality. I tell everyone, put on music, because I find for me it's a great source of elevation.
Question about this whole music thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about music that I think we're not allowed to listen to music at all. I heard this somewhere.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to listen to music at all.
Right. There is an inyan about it since the Beit Hamikdash. Right.
Destroy it. So
But
what is this? We're going on Hittilim?
no, that's not a stamp and seal halacha that we can't listen to music.
That are telling people that. And
Right.
I feel that for our generation, people get very
Right.
depressed without music.
I know.
Just the Omer,
I tried for a while. When I heard that,
There's
Yeah,
enough
no.
to survive.
Right.
There is, but I'm
What-
just saying, if you have to be without music at all the
I
time.
also can't imagine that. I tried very hard for a while to do that. When I heard that going on, I wasn't able to do that. I cracked all my discs, and then I ended up buying a lot of them again because it was really hard for me. So again, I think, and I had also consulted some rabbeim about that, and many of them told me that our generation, we just can't live with that.
It also says that you're not allowed to laugh fully, like have a full
Right,
laugh.
right.
So you can't, I don't know, you have to really...
I think if you
figure out,
can, again, inject in your life enough of Hashem's presence and work on your emunah, I think everything can be, brought into perspective. I think it's a matter of just not getting caught up and forgetting that, we are living, and that's the whole thing.
We
You
don't
have
have Beit Hamikdash.
that we don't have the Beit Hamikdash, that we're not living in perfect unity, that we're, there's suffering going on, and so on and so forth.
Not to belabor the music thing, but wasn't there a story of a Rav that he was a big tzaddik, I don't know who it was, and he used to sing like goyish songs. He used to hum them,
Yeah?
and he ended up going off the derech. I have to find
never-
the source, because I remember hearing this. That
I wouldn't be surprised, but that's humming goyish songs to what? Just to goyish music, something else.
I guess.
I'm not talking about, you see, the lyrics, that's what the Rav Shapiro was trying to explain, is that it's the lyrics, because you hear the words, it does change the essence of the song. It changes, it does. It somehow balances out, even if the tune is a little bit off. If you have really spiritual words, you got to hope that that's going to connect you and invoke. The whole idea of music is to invoke emotions. That's the whole inyan. So what is the product of my emotions? You understand what I'm saying?
That's what you're strong. I mean, you can put the nicest holy words to heavy metal, and it's just not going to be. I don't think it would be a spiritual.
I don't think someone would try to do that. You think someone would try to do that? You think you're going to have holy songs to heavy metal music?
Trance is kind of close.
Maybe. Again, I think it's a matter of listening to the song and also seeing what kind of feelings it invokes. I think when you're spiritually on that clean level, you could tell. It just doesn't make me feel good. It just doesn't. This is not for me. And so you know. But a lot of the teenagers today don't have that spiritual sensitivity. So I say take the best of the worst. At least give them the beautiful lyrics to it. It's just, trying to get them to hold on to something. And then hopefully, Bezat Hashem, their hearts are going to follow. And that's how, again, that's just my humbled opinion. Okay, so so the idea is the Jewish wisdom comes from a point of deduction. They see something, and through human study and human logic, they deduce what they come to some sort of a conclusion, which means that's how they get to elevate their wisdom. Whereas, what did we say? The Jewish nation was given Kabbalah. They were given the wisdom from Hashem. So it's an induction process. You're inducing the wisdom that you received and injecting it then and weaving into it that which we see, that which we learn, but it's different. You have a very different starting point. Now that's one of the main differences between Jewish wisdom and Gentile wisdom. With that, let's touch a little bit about oriental medicine. And this I find amazingly intriguing. This I brought down from Rav Zamir Cohen, Shlita. And according to the sources that he did this article on oriental medicine and wisdom, he writes that all oriental wisdom started from Avraham Avinu. And I've always speculated on this, but I never got the full picture. This is going to give us the entire picture. Avraham Avinu had 12 children, with what the Torah quotes is his wife, Keturah. Keturah, some commentaries say, was Hagar. After Sarah passed away, besides Yitzchak and Ishmael, he had 12 children. Some of them, their names were Zamran, Yakshan, Madan, Midian, right? Some we know, of course, the nation of Midian. And it's written in Bereshit, in Chayei Sarah, that Abraham sent his children because of fear that they were going to influence Yitzchak Avinu with Avodah Zarah. He saw that their foundation was not pure. He sent them to a place called Kadma, which again is being interpreted as the east, Mizracha. He sent them with presents, matnot. So what is the interpretation of the presents? They were impure energy secrets that he knew that they would not use for Kedusha. But he gave them secrets that are rooted in nature, sort of energy, natural remedies, and wisdom of the world, but they have no inherent holy nature to it at all, because in his foresight and his prophetic wisdom, he knew that they were going to use it for Avodah Zarah. But he gave them gifts to spread around the world that would help people that would give healing properties and medical, healing. It would encourage and help others on that level. On the other hand, to Yitzchak Avinu, what did he give? He gave him the Sefer Yetzirah. The Sefer Yetzirah is the root of creation, but it's from a holy base. It's all from divine, inherent, holy wisdom. So that was the difference between what he gave to his different children. Okay, so there was more, the wisdom that came from them was more on a physical level. It was more taking different parts of nature and being able to use them for better use. That was the concept of it. Now there is still a dose of spirituality in there, so that what it means is that inside Chinese medicine, inside Oriental medicine, inside even certain Hindu practices, there is great wisdom. The problem is that throughout the years, it's exactly what Avraham Avinu said. They injected all kinds of names and all kinds of meditative, seance kind of practices, seance practices that inject unholy names to it and created a real mishkabobble in terms of their ability for us to be able to use it. But at the base and at the core of this wisdom, there is true inherent wisdom. So if we know to go to the proper places, in other words, the Jewish people who are practicing, there are plenty of Jewish practitioners that practice Chinese medicine, that practice yoga, that teach yoga. Those are the people that we want to go to, and we want to be able to acquire wisdom from them and to be able to, benefit from that, from the wisdom that's was given to us given to the nations, the world from Avraham Avinu. Interestingly enough, in India, there's a class, what they call a class of highly priests. It's an elite sort of part of the Hindu society. They're actually called the Brahman. They're called Brahmans, which is very closely related to Abraham. And it's said that, again, being that the children of Abraham traveled to the east, some of their, the wisdom that they took to India. Fact is, this elite society, they resemble a lot of the Kohanim. They won't marry widowed and divorcees. They actually, abide a lot by what the Kohanim do till today. So let's talk just a little bit about Chinese medicine and just see how interesting the Chinese themselves talk about the tefillin and the wrapping of the tefillin and the acupoints that the Chinese medicine actually, what it invokes in a man when he actually adorns himself with tefillin. So Chinese medicine is all energy-based, right? They actually, it goes by whether there's a harmonious or disharmonious flow of energy that goes through the body. That's at the basis of Chinese medicine. And what they do is they trace the symptoms to see where there are blockages in the flow of what they call chi, which is chi for them is what they call the energy life force that flows within the body. How do they measure it? They measure it by taking the pulse, which is very interesting because in Kabbalistic sources it says that how Baal Shem Tov would be able to take a person's pulse and be able to tell what illness they actually are incurring based on the pulse. There's 10 different tones of pulses, beats and rates of pulses that conform to the 10 different pulses of melody, of music, which teaches us how elevated music is because each tone of music affects a different tone, and the rate of the pulse affects the pulses in the body. So it just goes to show another tie-in to the holiness of music. So how do the Chinese medicine, how does it work? They check the pulse, they inspect the tongue, the skin, the eyes, they look at sleeping and eating habits. We're going to see soon how Jewish and oriental healing, there's a lot of commonalities between the two. 3 basic beliefs in Chinese medicine is that the human body is a miniature version of the larger surrounding universe, which is the same thing as the Jewish belief is. Number 2, they believe in yin-yang, which are 2 forces, opposing forces that can either work in harmony or oppose to one another. That's that whole circle, right? The yin-yang, the dark and the black, which is our Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Ra. And the 3rd is that they believe, again, that there's this vital energy source called chi, and that's when it flows properly, the body is healthily maintained. They believe that there are certain pressure points. Again, in fact, they believe there's actually 365 acupoints in the body and 12 main, what they call meridian channels. 12 channels. It was believed that that's actually after the 12 tribes, like every tribe had their certain, they actually in Kabbalistic sources source back that every tribe had a certain healing aspect that they were able to bring to the Jewish nation. So that's where this comes, that there's a connection between their 12 main energy channels and the 12 tribes. Another note is one of Noach's grandchildren was actually named Sin. I don't know if anyone knows this, but Canaan had a child and he named one of his children Sin, which is China. So very interesting how you see a lot of... Okay, so just to quickly touch upon some of the consistencies between Jewish and Oriental medicine. Both talk about balance and harmony. Both talk about dietary recommendations, about breathing techniques, about visualization, about exercise, about prayer, about meditation. Both talk about the healing power of nature. So those are some of the consistencies. Also, very interesting enough, that in the Chinese medicine world, they believe that the healer needs to work on their midot, and that through working on their midot of being more patient, empathetic, compassionate, truthful, merciful, non-judgmental, to name a few, they are able to give proper healing energy to their patient that they're taking care of. So very, very interesting. They also have to work on their midot. Now let's look at the tefillin, and let's look at how the Chinese came up with some very interesting insights of how Chinese acupuncture improves mental, doning tefillin. Chinese acupuncture actually pinpointed how the place where the men adorn themselves with the tefillin, if it's the knot in the back of the skull, or if it's the points on their hand, actually touch some specific acupoints that increase mental clarity and spiritual harmony. So, for instance, they talk about the knot in the back of the head, that the tefillin touches this certain point in the back of the skull, that touches a couple of different, it opens up a couple of different energy points that acupuncture would otherwise do. We're going to get to it in a minute. And also the wrapping of the straps on the hand touches over 50 acupuncture points on the hand. It's interesting enough, they say that when the men wrap the hand, they actually have to do it in shlavim. They have to stop after, I think, a couple of wraps. They stop, they say, right? Right. So those actually segregate the different parts of the acupoints. So it's like specific that they stop at certain points and then move on, and then stop and then move on. Okay, so the pressure point in the back of the skull, the knot in the back, is where the governing vessel, which is the main point that penetrates to the brain, it's actually touched right over here. What are the benefits? The benefits are to concentration and to memory. It treats dizziness, stroke, and headaches. That's what they came to the conclusion. It reduces the desire for suicide and self-mutilation, and it connects us to our higher spiritual energy. That's what they found over here. Then there's another point that it also touches that calms the mind, balances the spirit, and can be can be used to treat mental diseases and certain mania disorders. Very interesting. There's a point on the hand that's also an opening point to this, what they call the governing vessel. It frees and moves the chi, which we said is that vital force, which is basically the flow of positive energy. It clears the spirit. It treats certain psychosis, like loss of memory, dementia, sorrow, fear. Very interesting. Certain other points on the hand have calming effects. They relieve pain. They soothe the mind. They calm anxiety. They stimulate memory. It goes on and on and on and on. So they found that really every one of the points really works together with the spirit. It's like from them, they can see it physically, that it actually touches points in the body that is there to benefit them for our psychological and our physiological well-being in our lives. To end off, I just wanted to, like I said, to touch on a couple of different ailments. And again, every week I think it's Kidai will talk about different ailments, and to tie it into spiritual and emotional work that each one of us can do. So let's look at a person who suffers from addictions, any sort of addiction. It could be a gambling, any addiction. So it comes and it stems from a spiritual desire to run away from our responsibilities. Person who has addiction problems, it starts with a belief that spiritually they're hated by God, and by them winning in this world and extremely going to one end, they believe that they're able to actually win over God's love. This is what spiritual sources teach us. Again, this is from the Wisdom of the Nations. This is not Torah-based, but I found that very interesting. Someone who's lactose intolerant. It comes from, and it's very interesting because when you think about lactose, you think about milk, right? So it has something to do with issues that we have with our parents. So it has to do with unresolved maternal issues, like anger or grief that we have possibly with our parents, a deep desire to receive attention, and angry at someone who over-nurtures us. So for some reason, we're not able to stomach the milk and accept the love, from a milk source, which milk for us represents parenthood. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this is all wisdom. So again, it could be something that, I don't know, they experienced one time or another when they were even in utero.
Dietary things, a lot of times you grow out of that with age.
Could be that it was resolved, right. Could be that it was resolved.
When you're young to really...
It could be that it was somehow resolved. We changed, they changed, something in the spiritual energy changed.
So it could be like a spiritual thing, not a conscious thing.
Yeah, well, of course. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. So arthritis often occurs after a joint was injured. So what the sources say is that we need to find the root cause of the spiritual injuries that have occurred and release anger and blame that we might have that's spiritually based, and that in turn can help resolve arthritis issues. Very interesting. Hips. Some of these make more sense than others, I must admit, but I'm just here to pass the information on.
Sorry, what's the source of it again?
So it actually comes from a spiritual nutrition guide that I received many, many, many years ago. Again, I don't believe it's Torah-based at all, but it's Wisdom of the Nations. And because I feel that we've learned so much that there is a basis of truth to it, I have very strong intuitive feelings about this, that there is truth to all this, and that by working through some of these emotional and spiritual aspects that we can actually cure ourselves physically, and emotionally from some of the things that they manifest on it. Because we all know that what's going on in the inside is a manifestation. It just comes out physically on the outside. So this is just a hint to some of those roots of some of those problems. The hips have to do with the ability to move forward. So when someone has hip issues, it can mean that they don't want to move forward. They have a fear of maybe leaving someone behind. Maybe they have a fear of being abandoned or being useless, and so they don't have this need to move forward. Again, something to think about. This was very interesting. Asthma. Asthma has to do with feeling choked over someone's emotional environment. When you have asthma, you can't breathe. So it's something about your inability to process your emotions that actually constricts your ability to take in life.
I actually heard that from a Rev once.
Okay, I'm telling you, my gut feeling is that a lot of this is Torah-based. A lot of this is Torah-based, but this is just on the surface. Athlete's feet means that someone's always in a hurry to be somewhere else. They're not satisfied with where they are.
It's so funny because somebody was just telling me that, I don't know if it's athletes, but they're having some sort of problem with
Okay, it's fungus. Okay.
Going places.
I tell you, I saw a lot of this. To be very truthful, I've tried this, by the way, on people, and a lot of people have told me that they feel that it definitely ties into them. The back. Okay, so depending on where the back pain is, it represents not feeling supported. Think about it. What is the spinal cord? It's this ability to keep yourself up. So back problems have to do with our emotional inability to support ourselves, or to feel that we're holding too much responsibility and we're buckling up to the responsibility. We can't hold it up anymore. We feel like we can't support ourselves anymore. What they talk about is that the upper part, back pain on the upper part, comes from a place of distrust, where you're distrusting someone else. There are issues of distrust. The middle part comes from a place of distress, where a person's anxious about something and is distressed over a certain issue. And the bottom part comes from a fear of abandonment. It's avoiding dealing with some painful issues that a person has. In other words, they want to abandon it. They don't want to deal with some sort of a painful issue, and so and I find that so many people in this generation suffer from lower back pain. Very interesting how we can, maybe get to the root of some of that. There are plenty of books that talk about the back and emotional healing. I know quite a few of them written by doctors that actually talk about this. So I know, again, this is not far off. Look at this. Bad breath. Bad breath. Someone's hiding the truth that one believes is ugly or wishes were untrue. So when they're talking about something, they don't want to talk about it. So their breath is as if bringing out a sense of ugliness that they would rather hold back because they don't want to believe that it's true. Very, very interesting, right? Bladder problems have to do with a lack of patience. I found that to be very interesting. Blood represents transmission of thoughts, attitudes, and belief systems, our desires. So by refining our thoughts, our attitudes, with our thoughts, of course, get conveyed to our attitudes, our belief, our basic belief systems, we can obviously cleanse our blood. And last but not least, blood pressure. Blood pressure represents temperament, self-control. So we know that someone who has high blood pressure is a person who has to work on their anger, their constant pull to be frustrated with life. And someone who has low blood pressure is a person who usually gives up on life, who has no desire to want to fight for that, which means staying alive, to fight for staying alive. So I leave it with that. Again, I feel like, as we go through the weeks, we might find a little bit of ourselves in some of these ailments, and we might be able to work with some of these emotional and spiritual, aspects. But what I learned mostly from this shiur by putting it together was that it's good to know that there is wisdom that we can, that we can achieve wisdom of Hashem also by learning from others. In other words, when you sit next to someone who's not Jewish, it's not a matter of us knocking them out and saying they don't have anything to offer me, but to look at them from a totally different perspective and to take what they have to teach us. If it's the science that we're learning in these shurim, about the creation, about the latest discoveries, it's to learn from it and again, inject it with Jewishness, and through that, God willing, come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out there and see if anyone's interested. We are doing a Chinese auction, God willing, we originally planned it for June 24th, but we're changing it to June 17th. We've come up with some amazing prizes. We're going to figure out a way to be able to offer it to our viewers also in Chutz La'aretz, Be'ezrat Hashem, which will be posted on our website. I'd like to encourage all of our viewers, anybody here, anybody who knows of anybody who could possibly contribute to the costs that, fortunately, these things generate. If it's advertising costs, if it's prizes that people can offer, I would ask that people open up their hearts, open up their purses, and be part of it. This all goes towards Emuna Kiruv projects. This all goes towards the book, the 180 days, 180 degrees in 180 days. Be'ezrat Hashem. My email is Orit, Riter@gmail.com. For anybody who wishes to ask questions on it, please feel free. And Be'ezrat Hashem, it should only be towards Torah learning, Torah inspiration, emunah inspiration, and I thank all the women who have really taken so much time in planning this and putting it out there and believing in the daily dose of emunah and believing in all that we're trying to achieve, and that's to achieve a beautiful life in this world and in the world to come, Be'ezrat Hashem, closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, happiness, emotional healing, togetherness, and to fulfill our task in this world. Amen. Thank you.